China's economy grows 5.4% in the first quarter, beating expectations ahead of sweeping US tariffs. Meanwhile, US tariffs hurt luxury brands as first quarter results show weak global demand. And countries race to safeguard their economies and secure favorable trade deals amid a 90-day pause on Trump's tariff hikes. Hello, I'm Taiba Aydin with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. We begin in China, where the economy has grown better than expected in the first quarter of the year. GDP expanded by 5.4% from January to March as exporters rushed to shift goods ahead of sweeping US tariffs. That figure exceeds Beijing's full-year target for 2025, as well as the 5.1% forecast by analysts. But China has warned it faces pressures amid a high-stakes tariff game with the US. Meanwhile, industrial output rose 6.5% in the same period and retail sales grew by 4.6%. For more on this, we're joined by Josh Mahoney in London. He's Chief Analyst at Scope Markets. Good to have you back on the programme with us, Josh. Now, it's been a good start to the year for China, but does this give us the full picture, given that exporters mostly front-loaded shipments ahead of those Trump tariffs?
Exactly. I mean, that is the fact of the matter. So this is hiding any of the detrimental impacts of these tariffs. And in actual fact, it's accentuating the strength as people try to front run those tariffs and ramp up their inventories. And so over in the US, it's also going to mean that we see businesses perhaps holding off on having to raise prices, perhaps even lowering prices over the near term because people are stockpiling these goods. And in a way, they want to sell them as quickly as possible to lower their inventory costs. Over in China, it means that everything looks great for the time being. We've seen better than expected GDP, although it remained steady as it was. We've seen better than expected industrial production, fixed assets investment, retail sales. So everything looks great. And if you just looked at the numbers, you would think that the Chinese economy is in perfect condition. But of course, we know what's around the corner, and Q2 is going to look very different.
Right, and China has set a growth target of 5% for this year. Will it be able to maintain this level of growth given these looming tariffs?
In essence, no. I know that there's a desire to try and realign themselves towards other countries, most notably in Asia. But they're just not going to be able to make up for the shortfall, given the fact that they have 145% tariffs imposed on their exports to their biggest export market. 15% of their exports go to the US. Now, when you're looking at that 5% target, it's unlikely that the Chinese themselves are going to be the ones that lead the downgrades of their GDP outlook. But we have seen recently the likes of Commerzbank pointing towards 3.8% this year, ANZ 4.3%, and SocGen 4% for this year. That all depends on exactly how the tariff war shapes up. And for all we know, we're going to find an agreement today and suddenly the tariffs are down and there's trade agreements that they will buy X amount of goods from the US. It doesn't feel that way, though, because just overnight we did hear from Donald Trump, who has banned the export of their H20 chips from NVIDIA, citing security reasons. But markets heading lower today on the fact that that US-China relationship continues to sour.
Yes, and we know that China has been struggling with weak domestic demand for some time. So what do the latest growth in retail sales suggest?
Well, yeah, I think that is the key, really. And it has been for a long time, that the need for the Chinese to grow their domestic consumer base. But we know that the Chinese economy has been struggling over the years. Of course, we had the sort of credit crunch. We've had issues around the housing market. If your house is massively devalued, you don't really feel emboldened to go out and start splashing the cash, so to speak. But we have seen strength in terms of domestic retail sales, which certainly is a boost. It highlights the fact that the measures being taken by the PBOC and the government in terms of sparking domestic consumption, which is one of their key aims, has been working so far. But you know, if we continue to see these tariffs in place, you're likely to see an increase in terms of unemployment, increased uncertainty around people's businesses or people's workplaces, and that likely would drive weakness in terms of their spending habits too.
Right, Josh Mahoney, Chief Analyst at Scope Markets, thank you very much for being with us. Now, US tariffs are shaking up luxury brands around the world. One of the world's largest luxury groups, LVMH, reported weaker than expected first quarter results, causing its stock to plunge significantly. Now, earlier this week, it lost its position as the most valuable luxury company, overtaken by Hermes.
LVMH had a tough start to the year. Sales were already expected to dip, but the results came in even lower. Revenue dropped 3% in the first quarter, despite expectations of a 2% increase. The drop was driven by weakening demand in key markets, particularly China, signaling growing challenges for the whole global luxury sector. U.S. sales, which make up nearly a quarter of the Paris-based company's profits, fell 3%. But China and nearby regions saw the steepest fall, down 11%, more than twice the decline analysts had feared. Only Europe posted growth. The disappointing results sent shares of the company down 7% during Monday's trading session in Paris, with the decline continuing into Tuesday. And it's not just LVMH. The whole luxury sector is feeling the squeeze. Kering, the parent company of Gucci, saw shares dip 2.5%, while Burberry fell 4.4%, and Richemont lost 1.6%. It's a big shift for LVMH, which had soared during the pandemic luxury boom. Now, with a market cap of $270 billion, the company is facing real headwinds. Tariffs introduced by President Donald Trump could further hurt sales in the second quarter. To cope, LVMH is considering raising prices and cutting back on marketing spend. Hermes and Moncler are set to report their earnings later this week. The results could give us a better picture of where the luxury market is headed.
Let's get more on this now with Sol Eslake. He's an economist at Corinna Economic Advisory. Good to have you on TRT World with us. Now, what's behind this decline in luxury sales? Do consumers not have the money to spend, or are they just no longer interested?
What that report just highlighted was the very large decline in luxury sales by LVMH into China, down 11%, as you just heard. And that is symptomatic of the continuing weakness of consumer spending in China, as evidenced by not only the continued softness in the retail sales figures that were reported today, but also the fact that measures of consumer sentiment have never recovered from the levels to which they fell during COVID. And given the challenges that are ahead for the Chinese economy as the US tariffs hit it, as they're intended to do, there's a possibility that Chinese consumer spending could weaken further. And that will depend on the extent to which the Chinese authorities change course and seek to boost household spending and give households reason to save less of the huge proportions by international standards of their incomes, which Chinese households do. Now, up to this point, Xi Jinping has conspicuously rejected multiple suggestions that the way to improve China's economic performance and make it less reliant on exports, as it has been for much of the reform era, is to promote stronger growth in household spending. And importantly, at the recent two sessions meetings in Beijing, he appeared to give some indication that they were giving serious consideration to measures designed to boost household spending. So if they followed through with that, then China could see a pickup in spending on luxury goods. But the other big challenge, of course, for the industry, bearing in mind that most of these products are made or exported to the United States from Europe, is the tariffs that the Trump regime is now looking to impose. Remember that the so-called reciprocal tariff applicable to imports from Europe was set at 20% rather than, say, 10% on a lot of other close US trading partners, not as big as on China, but China's not a big exporter of these products to the United States. So sales from European producers, not just LVMH, but Hermes and others, could be in for a challenging time in the June quarter and beyond. Of course, we still don't know whether tariffs will be reimposed. They've been suspended for 90 days, whether they'll be continued, whether the European Union will cut a deal with the Trump regime that alleviates that. But the other possible dimension, therefore, is that to the extent that producers of luxury goods aren't able to sell product into the United States, they may be forced to look to other markets, not just China, which may still remain weak, but in other parts of Asia, Japan, other Southeast Asia, maybe into India, into the Middle East, and into Australia here. And that could require some more competitive pricing by these luxury goods producers as well. In other words, outside of the United States, where prices are going to go up because of the tariffs, in other parts of the world, there could be more competition that results in lower prices.
Right, Sol Eslik from the Corinna Economic Advisory, thank you very much for your insights.
Thanks for having me.
Now a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. Nvidia last year hit a market cap topping the likes of Apple and Microsoft, but now it's facing quarterly charges that could reduce its profits. The company will be charged $5.5 billion for exporting H20 AI chips to China. It follows new US government restrictions requiring licenses for such exports set to begin next month. China is Nvidia's fourth largest region by sales after the US. Mining giant Rio Tinto reported its lowest first quarter iron ore shipments since 2019, blaming cyclones in Western Australia's Pilbara region. The company warned that more weather disruptions could lead to a 2025 forecast miss. Tropical cyclones at Dampier Port caused 13 million tonnes in losses, with a $92 million set aside for recovery efforts. Rio Tinto's shares fell 1.2% on the news. United Airlines will cut 4% of its US flights starting in July due to weak travel demand. It will also retire older aircraft and reduce flights on quiet travel days. The airline says it's hard to plan ahead as the economy is uncertain. However, the airline made more than expected in the first quarter. Its shares went up by 6%. And Argentina has received $12 billion as the first part of a new $20 billion loan agreed with the IMF. The funds will boost central bank reserves. The country also ended currency controls and set a new exchange rate band for the peso as part of wider economic reforms. Following the US's 90-day pause on most tariff hikes, countries around the world are racing against time to protect their economic interests and strike favourable deals. Here's how Asian countries are reacting to Trump's tariffs. South Korea has raised its semiconductor support package to over $23 billion, an increase of nearly $5 billion. The decision comes after Trump said he would be announcing the tariff rate on imported semiconductors over the next week. Seoul had previously unveiled emergency support measures for its auto sector, seeking to reduce the impact of US tariffs. Indonesia is sending senior ministers to Washington with a sweetened deal in hand. Jakarta plans to offer increased imports from the US and new investment opportunities. Part of the proposal includes purchasing up to $19 billion worth of American goods, aimed at covering the US trade deficit with Indonesia. Vietnam says it's cracking down on Chinese goods being rerouted through its ports to dodge tariffs. The move is in direct response to US concerns over products falsely labelled as made in Vietnam. Hanoi is also tightening controls on sensitive exports heading to China. And Taiwan is offering zero tariffs as a starting point for trade talks with the US, with Taipei saying it will eliminate barriers instead of retaliating. Taiwanese firms are also planning to boost their US investments. Last week, Trump had warned Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company that it could face tariffs as high as 100% if it fails to build its promised factories in the US. President Trump's unilateral 10% tariffs on all foreign products entering the US are causing distress in Bangladesh's garment industry, the country's main export. As Mohammed Kamruzaman reports from Dhaka, the little light at the end of the tunnel may be that American tariffs on Chinese products are much, much higher.
Rukhsana Akhtar works in a ready-made garment factory in Bangladesh. She lives in a single slum room with her husband, a day laborer, and her 3 children. She knows nothing about tariffs, but is acutely aware she can't afford to lose her job.
2 of my 3 children are students now. Both our incomes combined are not even sufficient. Governments should be alert so that no garment factories close and our salaries increase a bit.
Akhtar is one of nearly 4 million ready-made garment workers in Bangladesh. Most of them are from remote, needy families. All of them fear being impacted by US President Donald Trump's tariff war. He hit their country with a 37% tariff, a thunderbolt to the garment industry, which accounts for 80% of Bangladesh's exports. With the request of Bangladesh's interim government and other countries, the Trump administration, however, decreased the additional tariff to 10% for 90 days, putting a question mark on what's coming after 3 months. But all is not lost. Hope may have appeared on the horizon.
This will bring an opportunity not only for Bangladesh, but all other countries who export garment products to the US like Vietnam, Cambodia, Pakistan, India and Sri Lanka. Because the minimal decline of Chinese exports to the US can't be covered by all other countries. So a big opportunity awaits us.
Mohammed says the Bangladesh must ensure an uninterrupted energy supply and build the pending seaport in the Bay of Bengal. Analysts say that Bangladesh can handle the issue tactfully with Trump's 90-day grace period and can even boost its products in the US market.
If you put a lot of tariff, Bangladesh will suffer, your consumer will suffer, and a lot of women. Bangladesh has a unique characteristic. The ready-made garments, most people are women who work there. So you are not just buying goods from Bangladesh, you are helping women to develop. And that is one thing we can negotiate. So we have to bring new things in the table so that our negotiation becomes stronger.
The US is Bangladesh's single largest export destination. In 2024, Bangladesh exported goods worth over $8.4 billion to the US, with $7.3 billion of that from the garment sector. Many of Bangladesh's garment factories depend almost entirely on US orders. Analysts say that even Bangladesh's interim government head, Professor Muhammad Yunus, who happens to also be one of the world's most reputable economists, knows that the country will be in serious trouble if the ready-made garment industry fails. So he is going to be doing everything in his power to make sure Trump tariffs do not stick. Muhammad Kamruzzaman, TRT World, Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Joining us now from Dallas is Shafkat Rabi, geopolitical columnist and adjunct faculty at the University of Dallas's College of Business. Good to have you with us, Shafkat. Now, textile and garment production was already hit hard by last year's political unrest. Do you think the industry will cope with this latest blow?
Thanks for having me. The Bangladesh had some political turmoil over the last, I would say, 2 years. And then it culminated in the ouster of the dictator Sheikh Hasina back in August 2024. The country has actually experienced expedited and larger orders from the United States over the last few months. And Bangladesh posted, I think, to the US about 45% export increase year over year. So the country did come back from the lulls of 2024. But the challenges remain. Bangladesh does have large capacity for taking large orders. It is not easy for the US importers to route the trade to some other country, particularly for the given input cost, which is fairly low in Bangladesh in terms of ready-made garments. So the short answer would be Bangladesh did overcome the bad patch that it went through during the political turmoil. But now this whole tariff situation is making things complicated, but it is not insurmountable. Bangladesh does have several tools in its toolbox to address the tariff situation created by Donald Trump.
Right, and with garments making up a major 80% of the country's exports, could this tariff shock be a wake-up call for Bangladesh to diversify its industrial base?
I mean, Bangladesh has had this wake-up call for very long as of now. because it is obvious that the country has over-reliance on the RMG sector, which is the ready-made garment sector. It is a known problem. Bangladesh is paying attention to that. There are some other industries like leather, pharmaceuticals, electronic manufacturing, in light of what's happening with China and Vietnam right now. Some of the small-scale electronics manufacturing will obviously find their way into the country, which is already happening. Like we have seen a growth in smaller cellular phone devices, toys, small items like that are increasing in share, bicycles being another one. So yes, so there is some diversification, but it is still not there. As I said, the country has overinvested in this one industry, and it is hard to just move away from it. And the orders keep coming to Bangladesh for RMG. So yes, you are right. It may be an opportunity for the country to look into other industries as of now, in light of this latest situation. But it's going to be a slow progress over maybe multiple years in the future.
And we're seeing Asian countries respond swiftly to the US's tariff threats. So how do you see Bangladesh using this 90-day window to shield its economy?
Well, Bangladesh, as I said, has multiple tools in its toolbox to address the issue with Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs. So if you look at Bangladesh's options, Bangladesh imports about $75 billion of items every year. And out of that 75 billion, there is about 2 to 3 billion of soybeans, wheat, cotton, various other agricultural products. And US happens to be one of the largest exporters of these agricultural products. So Bangladesh has written a letter to the United States, Bangladesh government, on April 7th. And if you read that letter, it mentions that the country wants to buy a lot more LNG, liquefied natural gas, LNG. It wants to buy agro products like cotton, wheat, corn in larger quantities. It also said it's going to remove the 50% tariff on American exports on semiconductors, some other heavy machineries. And it also talked about removing multiple non-trade barriers. So all these things can lead to about $2 to $4 billion of excess import from the US without doing much to the economy in Bangladesh, without raising prices. So if US were to keep its current formula, which is about 37% for Bangladesh in terms of tariffs, even if the current formula holds and Bangladesh buys about $3 to $4 billion of items, as I just mentioned, Bangladesh will be enjoying a lower tariff than many of its competitors like China, Vietnam, and even India and Pakistan. So Bangladesh's problem is not insurmountable, even if the Trump tariffs were to hold just the way they are right now. Besides that, Bangladesh is obviously engaging the US into other options, including more investment into Bangladesh's industrial base. Because, as you know, the Trump administration's main objective is to basically isolate China. Mm-hmm. And many of the Chinese industries are actually going into Bangladesh. Right. So Bangladesh now needs to go to US and get US investment into Bangladesh directly, as opposed to Chinese investment into Bangladesh. So it's a complicated
unfortunately,
thing.
we will have to leave it there. But thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, Turkey's defence and aerospace exports soared by 147% in March, reaching a record-breaking $884 million. At the fourth edition of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, Turkish companies promoted major advancements aimed at strengthening the global presence of Turkish-made weaponry. Emre Boz sent us this report.
Turkey's defence sector is growing at an exponential rate. And here to discuss with me more on that is Taner Sağıroğlu, Director of Business Development at Damise, a new and emerging and growing company, a Turkish company. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, my pleasure joining with you.
And so I guess I wanted to start off by asking, what is your company? Tell us about your emerging company and how do you think its growth prospects are?
Sure. Well, I'm representing Damis. It's a digital platform which the idea has been developed since 2017 and then founded in 2022. It's a digital platform that connects all stakeholders in the defense, aeronautics, maritime, and land systems. And currently, what it does is providing a supplier management system to all the stakeholders, and also to verify the certificates of the products and the companies. So that is what it does. And
I guess I wanted to ask about how does it add to Turkey's already growing military sector? We know that there's huge investments to indigenize the sector. How does your company add to these growth prospects in the industry?
Well, actually, as you know, the Turkish defense industry is booming, is growing up. And currently, it is roughly around $7.2 billion export, and then fills the requirement of all Turkish defense, and also providing defense equipment to neighboring countries and stretching to Asia as well. So our company, Damis, is providing a digital platform in order to connect all the stakeholders. So this is also adding a value to Turkish indigenous defense industry, and also it connects to global market. So anyone interested in the Turkish defense industry can easily go into a look and find out any defense country in Turkey with their certified qualifications and products.
Well, that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching.